I'm ready.
Yes, so first I would like to introduce you to anybody that doesn't know you yet. You are.
Yeah, everybody in Austria.
No. You're an American doctor, author, and researcher with well over 50 publications. And you're also a long term practitioner of Buddhism and advocate for spreading compassion and teaching people how to have more compassion. And I'm very honored to be interviewing here today. So, thank you so much for taking the time. And I would just start with the first question, which is what was your original motivation to study medicine and how has it changed over the years?
So, my father was a surgeon,
Mm-hmm.
and I kind of just grew up thinking I was going to be a doctor. I never had another profession in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I also noticed that whenever anyone was sick or hurt, or there was an accident or something, I always wanted to help. I always wanted to know what to do. And that seemed very natural to me. But um, as a, since you read my memoir, you realize that I had some doubts when I finally got accepted to medical school and started. I actually dropped out because I couldn't remember exactly what I wanted to do. It was a tumultuous time in America. I entered medical school in 1971. It's just the middle of the Vietnam War protests and kind of against too much, uh, you know, uh, and I, just wasn't sure I wanted to join the establishment to such an extent, that I would be happy. But when I dropped out, I realized that part of me had always pictured myself as a doctor. So I went back thinking that I had to at least finish medical school to give myself that option. So I mentioned that in the book. I make a point of it because people think, oh, you're really this compassionate person and you always wanted to help people. And I did in my basic nature, but it was a struggle actually to get through medical school. And then it really hasn't changed. I like helping people when they need help.
Yeah. That's a really good motivation. And I can imagine it must be. I struggle sometimes with the same thing, wondering if it's worth it to invest so much.
Yeah. So for me, what helped me was I said, okay, if I end up not liking it, I don't have to do it, but I have to have the option. If I don't finish the schooling, then I don't have the option, and then I might regret it later.
Yeah.
But then, as you know from the book, we're talking about, I'm promoting the book, A Gentle Reign of Compassion, that I ended up going to work at a rescue station near Mount Everest in Nepal because I was a mountain climber and there was something about altitude illness that people didn't know very much. So my motivation really for getting through medical school was to go work in the Himalayas. I had a pretty narrow focus, but strong focus at that time. And as we will see, it really dramatically changed my life.
Yeah. It really did.
What's that?
It really did.
It really did. Yes, yeah. Everything that's good that's happened to me came from going to Nepal.
Yeah. That must have been quite a decision.
I'm sorry, quite
a decision, a big decision.
Yeah, I mean, the decision to go work at the rescue post was automatic. It's just I didn't want to do anything else at that point. I just thought, this is what I have to do. It's kind of almost karmic that it was so strong for me to give up, drop the jobs I was working and just go to Nepal and work for free up in the high mountains at 4,200 meters and be the only doctor up there. So it was challenging.
Yeah, that actually brings me to one of the next questions, is that in your life you've shown again and again that you are very courageous. So what advice would you give to a person that struggles with overcoming their fears?
Yeah, that question is an interesting one, Rhea, because I don't think of myself as courageous at all. You know, when things get tough, my first reaction is, "Oh my God, what am I doing?" You know, um,
Right.
so I was thinking about the answer to that, and I think it has to do with motivation. If
Mm-hmm.
you have good motivation, if you want to help someone, if you remind yourself that you have the skills, that you are the person that they're coming to see right then, and that you have to do your best, and whatever that best is, giving it all, that that could be called courage. Um,
Yeah.
but the inner doubts had always been quite strong. And so I didn't think of myself as courageous. It's more like I had to do what I had to do. If that's courage, then that's
Yeah.
what courage is.
Well, to anyone that hasn't read the book yet, there's a scene that you describe where you had to go over a very rocky, frozen bridge to get to the other side to attend to a medical emergency. And I was just
Yes.
reading it and I was like, that's what inspired this question, because I was thinking, how can you have the courage to do something like that? But you said because of your motivation, because you had the bigger picture in
Yeah.
mind, or?
Also, it was the only way to get to the aid post, so I either turn around or cross the bridge. And objectively, the bridge was safe. It was just scary, you know.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I wasn't really risking my life. I just kind of acrophobic.
Yeah. Uh, that is something really. Many people struggle with that. That's why. That they.
Yeah. But if you're motivated to do something, you will do it. I was thinking about it in terms of like parents and their children. You know, a parent would throw themselves in front of a car
Yeah.
to save their children. Is that courage? Is that
Yeah.
love? You know, just doing something for somebody. You know.
Yeah.
So there's lots of examples of doing what you have to do in a situation rather than fleeing. Um,
That is a really good answer. Thank you. Yeah. So you studied health for a very long time. And in your opinion, what are the most important factors in staying healthy?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I actually feel like I haven't studied health that much. I've studied disease and treatment and so on.
Yeah.
But thinking about the question, I think that for me, it's just learning to live sensibly. Don't overdoing things too much. And really, if you cultivate a peaceful mind, so many other things fall into place, you know, with your diet and exercise and so on. And then trying to use exercise, diet, and so on to create a peaceful mind is kind of working from the outside in. So better to work on your own mind, and then everything becomes easier. Yeah, I can get some exercise today. Yeah, I don't need to overeat. Yeah, I don't like those hangovers. And so I think that mental and physical balance, and so much obsessiveness about supplements and this diet and all the different things and all the different trends, and not eat gluten and eat gluten. And it was actually kind of nice being in Austria, where I met your mother in May, because people seem to have a more, at least what I saw in restaurants, a more natural relationship with food. It's just food. It's good food, and but it's not some special qualities for health or something. They must have health food stores, but I didn't see them.
Yeah.
So I think back, live sensibly and cultivate a calm mind, and then whatever happens, because the thing is that there are people who are really going for longevity and being as functional as they can for a long time, and then things happen, and then they're completely unprepared.
Yeah.
To no longer be able to exercise, and that was their only way of dealing with their own mind. Yeah. So if you want to deal with the mind, deal with your mind.
Yeah. So you're saying that you should first transform your mind, and then the rest will fall into place, and it won't be a struggle to force yourself.
That's what I'm thinking. Because what's the struggle? The only struggle that ever takes place is in your own mind. But we try to adjust our mind through exercise and through movies and distraction and food and cooking and everything else except the mind itself. And that would be something people should look at.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a really big factor in health in general, and I think that should be much more present in the medical system to educate people about this side of health.
But the trick is, you can't be convincing as a medical practitioner unless you've done it yourself.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons people believe me these days is like 40 years of practice. And when I say even the same words, I think it comes across in a certain way. I've learned that. I don't really feel that, but I learned that. And so if your goal is to help induce peace of mind in your patients, you better exhibit it.
Yeah, that's really true.
You know, otherwise you're just telling, otherwise you're just an overweight doctor telling them to run or something.
Yes. Yeah, I always say only take advice from people that seem happy. And that are like...
It's a good idea. Yeah. How do they do it?
Yeah, really true. So, a question that is very interesting to me is that in your book you write about the importance of intuition as a doctor. And did you always feel your intuition? Or are there ways that we can train and improve our intuition?
So if you recall, I was saying that intuition's an interesting issue in medicine because, if you think you have intuition and just start using, some magic feeling or something, that's not going to work. So I thought that intuition was some quality of sensitivity that you can develop towards the patients that you're seeing. And the main thing was, in my setting, when I worked in Kathmandu, Nepal, we didn't really talk about that, but I spent 15 years working in Kathmandu and at a clinic that took care of all the foreigners in Nepal, so all the trekkers and mountain climbers and diplomats, embassies and from aid projects and so on. And we didn't had at the beginning almost no specialty backup. So what I'm saying is that intuition is more like cultivating a kind of sensitivity to what you're seeing. And in our practice, which was in Kathmandu, Nepal, where we were the one kind of Western medical clinic for the entire expatriate community of diplomats, aid workers, and then all the 400,000, 500,000 tourists, and so there were no specialty backup. We had to really think clearly. That's all we had. We had very few lab tests, anything. Just learn like clinical thinking. And so the big question in my mind, is there something going on here that I'm missing? Is there something more serious than what it just appears on the surface? And that was something that was difficult to convey to others. That's why I kind of called it intuition. But I don't think it's just a mystical intuition. I don't think I have that. But if you have good motivation, really want to help somebody, say, is this person sicker than I think? Do I have to run some more tests? Do I have to see them sooner? Or are they really okay? And then, as you know from the book, there were some hard decisions that we had to make that were kind of based on my suspicion that something more was going on. But it's a difficult thing to teach, because you don't want people to go around and go, why did you think he's having heart disease? I don't know, it's just my intuition. You can't can't go by that. But so I think what I call intuition was a heightened sensitivity to something not being right, even if you can't objectify it, which is why I use the word intuition, because you have nothing really specific to point at except your own concerns based on your experience. Yeah. You can't be a medical student and walk into a case and go, well, I think this is, leukemia. Why? I don't know. Oh, well.
Yeah. So it's more of a sensitivity, more of a heightened concern.
So. And cultivating, learning from your experience, remembering your experiences, adding it up in your practice lifetime. I at one time had this concern, and that turned out to be different than I thought. And also being open to the fact that your sensitivity and concern may prove to be wrong, but it's just that you're paying more attention. It really comes up with sick children. children can't tell you that much, and so and they can get sick
Ah,
really fast. So in pediatrics, having that sixth sense is really
wow.
something to cultivate. Is this child got something more than it appears on the
Mm-hmm.
surface?
Mm-hmm. Okay. But is there a way, so you're saying it's just the only way to practice it is through experience and through just being questioning yourself, questioning, is there anything I could be missing?
Yeah, I think that yes, but I think also, as we'll talk about a little bit later, cultivating a calm mind as a physician. Then you're very open, you're aware. A calm mind leads to a kind mind, but
Mm.
those two qualities result in a clear mind. So if you're
Mm.
feeling calm and kind, just think on moments when you have felt that. Then your mind isn't filled with things, and so ideas, thoughts are more clear.
Mm-hmm.
Your energy for possibly consulting, it's really something as a doctor, you go, I could consult someone, but then I got to call them, and then they got to call me back, and the patient has to wait, so it might be hard, But if your mind is calm and it's clear, then that really helps that process. If you're overworked and tired and scared, as you often are in training, then that's not going to happen as easily.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. So, now we're moving on to the more Buddhist questions. So, many experienced practitioners have pushed the boundaries of what we thought was possible immensely. And from leaving the handprints in a stone to the stopping of decompositions of cells. And so, how has your worldview changed since you started to learn more about Buddhism?
Yeah. Well, I wrote about these things that I saw because I saw them.
Yeah.
And experienced them, and so they exist. And the problem is that the existence of being able to leave imprints in stone or keep your body from deteriorating by meditating for a week after you've died and so on, doesn't fit into our materialistic view of the world, that everything's just cells in circulation. When it stops, it's over. When the brain dies, there's no more consciousness. And so, but that view is no more valid or real than other views. That's just the view that we've adopted. But because you can measure it with machines and because we can see and touch it, we make it feel like it's more valid, but there's no real reason to believe that. So the most basic decision that we need to try to understand, and this will come up later when we're talking about my heart attack, does consciousness continue past the death of your body or not?
Yeah.
Okay. As human beings, this is, like, to me, the absolutely critical question to try to resolve.
Yeah.
Okay. Now people say, well, I don't know. How do you know? Most people, by the time they're your age, Rhea, give up. They may have explored it at university or whatever with their friends. They sit around and they go, well, who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, it's been my experience. They all just go, well, who knows? We'll find out, right? And they're kind of cavalier about it. But on the other hand, when I started asking audiences that were coming for my talks about medicine and compassion, I was really surprised. I asked an audience of like 200-300 people, medical people, all kinds of audiences. Do you think personally, after telling them that the medical model of consciousness is that it comes from the brain, and when the brain dies, consciousness is over. So that's how we tend to approach it as doctors, right? But as human beings, people feel differently. And so these audiences, when I asked them, how many of you feel that some awareness will continue past the death of your body, that you don't mind? And it's always 80%.
Wow.
Of the audience raises their hand. So then I learned to ask, I said, how many of you aren't certain or don't know? And then the remaining 19%. And it's interesting, this has happened several times in a row. How many of you really think it's going to be completely over when it's over? And there's always one person. And he kind of looks at me and goes, I don't know. So it's not so crazy
Yeah.
to think that consciousness continues because most people believe it. Okay,
Yeah.
so the fact is that either it does or it doesn't.
Yeah.
That's a fact. That's irrefutable. And so the question is, which one is it? And the question is, then what happens?
Yeah.
That's a question that a lot of Westerners don't answer. I mean, a lot of people in the audience probably hold Christian views and think they're going to heaven or being punished. But other people have some vague ideas about reincarnation or something, but they still feel like the mind is separate from the body.
Yeah.
So then I point out at that point that if the mind can separate from the body, it must be already in there as a separate entity. It doesn't make sense that the mind is suddenly generated at the last second as your body dies. So if that mind is already present, what qualities does it have? Is it just some empty consciousness, or is it filled with compassion and wisdom, which is the Buddhist view, that we have the qualities that travel with this mind? It's called Buddha nature. And so, if we have that, then training in compassion takes on a whole new meaning.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that. But in terms of unusual experiences, rainbows appearing and things like that, it just means that our relationship to reality is a lot more formed by our own mind and not just the external reality. The external reality doesn't have a separate, unchangeable, fixed characteristic. So the handprints in the rock are based on the fact, they say, that these individuals can see that the rock isn't really solid.
Yeah.
Their mind is so clear in that regard. So how can rock not be solid? Well, it isn't. From a physics point of view, it's made out of atoms. Atoms have a tremendous amount of space. They got a little nucleus and an electron cloud, And so if we could see them as they actually are, the rock would be almost just completely translucent, and we could put our hand into it. And that's what they say these guys can see like that. They even have stories, I didn't see it, but of people who could walk through rocks because they could see that they weren't really solid. So we, out of habit, out of endless lifetimes, solidify our environment into more and more solid, more and more real, and then form more and more attachments, which make it difficult to let go of life and so on. That's what you can talk about that later. So if the mind has all those powers and all that quality, then the mind resting and having some energy when the outer body has died doesn't seem so unbelievable when you finally see it, And so for me, when I wrote about it, I was trying to establish myself as a scientific, objective observer who had the opportunity to firsthand see. So if you see them yourself, and so if you see it for yourself, then it's real.
Yeah. How can you doubt that?
If it's real, then you have to adjust your worldview to accommodate what's real and not use your worldview to deny what's real.
Yeah.
So
you have to be flexible.
Need to be more open-minded, and the relationship between our perception and what actual reality is.
Yeah. It must be hard for people to just hear it and not actually see it. I think that's a big part, because if you just hear it, there's always that doubt, like that person could be lying, but if you see it with your own eyes.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to see the footprints and handprints and headprints in the rock, but you can say, well, someone could have carved that, or something like that, but really hard. And you carve rock, you chisel it, doesn't go back to being smooth. This really looks like something set in wet cement, completely smooth on all the sides, but of a complete handprint. So, the other things, this idea of what's called tuktum, of remaining in an unaltered state for a while after the outer body has died, after your heart brain has stopped, it's now been documented in videos and by a number of people and so on. It's a very real phenomenon. I don't remember the name of the movie, but the guys went around for several years trying to find practitioners who would let them film them in this state. And even some of the really great practitioners could hold their head up. They sat in meditation, and I think it's better now. This is going to be a little tricky for you to edit. So, yeah, it's true. If you see stuff with your own eyes, it's more believable. But that's why, since not everyone's going to have that chance, I wanted to make myself believable, which I think I do. People see that I'm a doctor and I'm thoughtful, and I have no reason to make things up.
Yeah, that's always the question. Why would they lie about it?
Yeah. And actually, I left out a lot of stuff. There's even more stuff, but I didn't want it to get that weird that people start.
Yeah. I bet there is more.
There's more.
Yeah.
The other thing is that your guides, the teachers, are the smartest people I've ever met, bar none. They're just their intelligence, their wisdom, their ability to say the right thing, to think, even some degree of clairvoyance, like I mentioned in the book, And then you think, okay, how can they be so smart, but at the same time be superstitious about stuff? And it really seems arrogant to me when people say, well, Buddhist meditation, I can see that's pretty good, but the rest of all that stuff, the horns and the drums, and that's just ancient superstitious stuff. It doesn't have any meaning, And these guys who could do anything in their lives spend days and weeks doing these ceremonies, which I think really have benefit. And they don't have to do them. And they don't think they do it out of some superstition.
Yeah.
But there's very deep meaning attached with all the rituals and so on if you study them. And so I think we need to be more open-minded about these traditions that have been passed down so long, and not just judge it through our modern filter. And particularly, meditation is good, but the rest of that's just ancient stuff that doesn't matter.
Yeah. It has even been proven that specific sounds can activate specific areas in your brain and make them more...
Yeah, maybe that, or sounds in the, with the beings that you're trying to connect with and so on. I don't know, but I'm not an expert in that.
Yeah. So
or open about.
Yeah, it's really important to stay open-minded. And one other term that is widely heard of in Western culture is karma. So how do you understand karma? How would you explain it to somebody?
So karma is a Sanskrit word that literally just translates as action. And so all of our thoughts and actions stem from thoughts. We don't take any actions without having a thought behind it, although it seems like it sometimes when you're drunk. It just turns out that in the Buddhist viewpoint, karma is a natural law. There's no superior being that it just happens that our actions that are favorable, that are compassionate, that benefit people, result in happiness for ourselves in the future. Destructive, negative actions, and particularly anger, result in having to suffer in some way in the future. Now that may be this lifetime, maybe next lifetime, maybe many lifetimes. If we understand the Buddhist concept of reincarnation, it's endless.
Yeah.
It's not just last lifetime and next lifetime, but it's really good. So karma, these actions, if you do something, you really hurt somebody, steal from them, lie, cheat, something like that, it sows a little seed, and it's a seed like a plant seed is one of the analogies, And so that seed exists in your life stream, but it may not find the right place to come out for a long time. And then the right time and place is like finding soil, moisture, and heat that allows the seed to germinate. But when it does, it can only grow into the flower that created it. It can't grow into something else. So if it's a cactus, it can only grow into a cactus. If it's a tulip, it can only grow into a tulip. So it's always there.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say that you did something really good and you have some really good karma and compassion, stuff like that. And then finally, somebody makes a Dharma center in some beautiful place in Austria. And then you hear about it and you think, huh, maybe I should check that out. You know, how many other millions of Austrians don't check it out?
Yeah.
You know, so you can think of that as karma ripening, just like the plant. You know, it was, the seed was in there for you to be attracted, but until the circumstances arose, you didn't have the opportunity, and then you take advantage of it. It also is explanation for some people who can never get money, no matter how hard they try. They work hard, they mean well, but something goes. So maybe they were greedy in a past life, and this is the result of that. If you're really generous, then money comes to you. Your parents have it, your grandparents leave it for you. Something, money's never a problem for you. And so again, these kinds of things are the explanation of how karma works. And so my teachers, Tuku Urgyen Rinpoche in particular, Chokyi Nyima Rinpoche's father, said if we really understood karma, we would be really careful how we act. And he actually said something that really stuck with me. He said, we should be so thoughtful about our actions as if someone were walking around behind us holding a needle next to our eye.
Wow.
And if we forgot he was there and turned like that, the needle would hit our eye, you know. So doing good and refraining from doing harm, even if you don't study or don't do anything else, if you have any doubts about whether there are consequences, it's good to be really careful. And then, why are there consequences? Well, you know, if our mind were to die at death, then we wouldn't have to pay attention to anything.
Exactly.
You know, and like some of these awful shooters who shoot up a school or a shopping center and then shoot themselves before they're arrested, they think their suffering will be over because they shot themselves. Instead, they're going to suffer like enormously. So if our mind continues, then karma makes a difference. Then there's a law, there's a rule, at least from a Buddhist point of view. If it doesn't continue, then it wouldn't matter. Really, as soon as you got tired of it, you could just end it and there'd be nothing left to do. But our positive actions result in being reborn in favorable circumstances where we can connect with Dharma centers in Austria. And our negative actions make that more difficult.
Yeah. That is a really good motivator as well.
Yes. Yeah, you need to be careful if you really understand that there's a law of cause and effect. And they really teach that. It's one of the main basic teachings of Buddhism, to be aware of this and be careful.
And also, like you said in the beginning, if it is endless, then that could also mean that you are everybody from a past life. The spider you meet is you from a past life.
If we really understand karma and reincarnation, then that's true. That they say that we've been reborn so many endless times before the onset of this universe, past universes, and so on. So that every other being on the planet is someone that we've been in a family relationship with at some point. So yes, you can see the mosquito on your arm as being your past mother who was really kind to you and fed you at her breast and cared about her whole life. And then you go,
yeah.
So, but that's more advanced.
Yeah, but it is great to find connection again. You start to feel like the world is connected more.
And also not just insects. Sometimes we pick out insects or animals or something, but every human being has been someone that we were once close to. And so people now are appearing as our enemy, but we need to see inside them that they were once a different being that we were really close to. You know?
Exactly. How has Buddhism influenced the way you practice medicine?
Well, when I started meditation, as I wrote in the book, I found that I was being more the kind of doctor that I could see that it would be nice to be. I was more patient and calm, and created an environment where people could more easily say what was really bothering them.
Yeah.
They might come in for abdominal pain, but then more quickly start talking about they think their husband's having an affair or something that is really the main thing, and then crying. I made a point of always having tissue within, as people started crying a lot more. People are not that happy, a lot of them. You know, the medicine, being sick brings them to the doctor, but they really need someone to talk to. And if you're kind of professional and abrupt and just focusing on that, they won't open up. And then they won't feel treated or seen as a whole being. So that started happening more automatically, to such an extent that it led to my whole medicine and compassion project of asking Choki Nyima Rinpoche to teach Western doctors and nurses, and I turned that into a book called Medicine and Compassion, which has been translated into German. I think it's gone out of print.
So we were talking about the way Buddhism influenced the way you practice medicine, and that you wrote the book Medicine and Compassion.
Yeah. And so not only was I able to be more present and patient with people, let them say what they needed to say, but as I mentioned earlier, a calm mind, kind mind, and clear mind, as Choki Nyima Rinpoche likes to say. So the clear mind would help me think of solutions a little better. Sometimes diagnosis, sometimes it's who to consult, sometimes it's what tests to order or something like that. So it helped my medicine practice too, not so being caught up with all the thoughts and feelings that I had at the time. So I think Buddhism had an extremely positive effect on my medical practice.
Yeah.
It still does. I feel really natural now when I see people. I don't have to put on a doctor persona or attitude or something. I kind of had that anyway, but it became even more natural.
Became authentic.
Which is nice to see, you know, that you're not out in the hall with one personality and going, oh, hi, you know, I'm so glad to see you. I'm Dr. Geister. I'm going to take care of you today. But just going, hi, you know, just being really connected with this desire to ease their suffering. And that was the other thing I think was an important point, because what's the purpose of medicine? And we can say, oh, it's to cure disease, it's to prolong life, it's to keep people from dying. It's to keep people from getting sick. But those are the activities of medicine. But the purpose of medicine is to relieve suffering. From birth to death, we just take care of people. Suffering comes, there's no question. And so we can't keep everybody from dying. We can't keep anybody from dying, ultimately. We can prolong life a bit, but only to a certain extent. We can't give anyone any kind of regimen that will prevent them getting sick at any point, you know. So these activities that we do are good, they help, they relieve suffering, but we got to realize that they're just trying to relieve or prevent suffering to some extent, which is going to come anyway. So our goal with every person we see is to try to make their suffering less. Then we can always succeed. We can always succeed at trying to relieve suffering. We can't always relieve it. Sometimes the strongest painkillers don't relieve suffering, but at least we're trying, you know, and then we're successful. But if we think that because your patient died that we failed, I mean, unless you really screwed up, you know, it's your fault. But, you know, you do your best all the way along the line. The reason that hospice care evolved is because when I was in medical school, we really didn't know what to do with people with terminal diagnoses. We quit seeing, we left them alone in the room. We were ashamed to talk to them and say, we don't have anything further to offer. Like it was this complete failure, not like they're a human being who's going to die and then, you know, they just need help in doing that. So then some other people stepped in who were more comfortable with end-of-life care, but there's no reason why it should be separated out. It's part of the whole care from birth to death. You know, that's how human beings are. That's what happens. You have to think about what's the cause of death.
Life.
So go ahead, ask me some questions.
So what are good ways to train and grow our compassion?
Yeah. So the short answer is that once we realize that suffering is really an inevitable part of being born, being a human being or any being, then that and that it's true for us and it's true for all other people, then that can be a really natural stimulus for our compassion. Oh, isn't it sad? Everybody has to suffer. It's so difficult. So then it makes you not want to increase anybody's suffering through your own actions. And then you might want to comfort, make them better. Just this feeling, this person's suffering. You go into medicine, then you have skills. You know, you could be a normal human being and just wishing somebody could get over their illness, but we can actually do something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's really amazing. So you cultivate this attitude of wanting to help, but how do you help in a great way? That requires clearing your mind of the things that are the obstacles to this natural compassion that you're cultivating by thinking of the human condition. And so you have this natural desire to relieve suffering, but we don't see it because we're scared, we're tight. You're a medical student, you go in there, you know very much, so you don't want to say the wrong thing. Your mind is just, instead of just thinking of the patient, what's like to be there, waiting for test results that may change their lives dramatically. It may be cancer, not cancer, maybe fixable, not fixable. They're going through, we always remember the patient's the one with the problem.
Yeah.
And so we want to be there and open. And so you cultivate a calm mind after generating a desire to ease suffering. That's how you train in compassion.
Mm-hmm. So you remove the obstacles that are preventing you from already spreading it.
Be present compassion, which we know because when we are calm under just natural circumstances, then someone asks you a favor, can I do this, can you do that? Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
You know, and when you're tense and tight and busy with things, someone asks you, I can't do it, leave me alone. And so we kind of do that with patients. You know, we're tense and we're tight, and they ask something and we're a little snappish. So calm mind is the key. But a calm mind without cultivating this positive motivation to ease suffering, compassion is the desire to relieve suffering in Buddhist definition. So you cultivate that desire. You can wake up in the morning and say, today I would like to ease suffering as much as I can in everybody that I meet. And it sounds funny to say, I know it does, but you would not want to wake up and say, today I want to cause suffering as much as I can in everybody that I meet. We would feel superstitious about that. But why don't we feel good about the positive affirmation? And actually, after like a week, it becomes really natural. I really want to ease suffering as much as I can in all such cases. It just becomes, you know, like anything with repetition, becomes more natural. Why am I saying that? Well, maybe I really believe that. And then you go to work, and then maybe actually do ease some suffering. You go, yeah, this is what I came here to do. This is the purpose of medicine, is to ease suffering. And then people you meet on the street, people that are here in your family, and all these things, it just carries over. There's no sense cultivating compassion for one set of people and then not utilizing it on everyone.
Yeah, and compassion itself is very healing. Compassion.
It's the key to everything.
Yeah.
There's no other way to be.
And people feel it when there's this loving presence. That alone can sometimes just ease them.
Can you imagine you're laying in a room, you're waiting for some results, you're waiting for some tests, you're scared. Mind just generate hope and fear, hope and fear. You know, if someone comes in and they're looking at the chart and you're not looking at them and all this stuff, they leave and they go, what happened? Or you go in and so I'm Dr. Shlim. How are you feeling? What's going on? You know, here's what we're going to do here. You know, let me get a little more information from you, but I know this is a tough situation. I really want to help you as much as I can. And they just go,
yeah.
That's what we can bring to medicine.
That someone is
Not
there.
fake, but genuine.
Yeah.
Genuinely. And sometimes you don't even, like I found out, you don't even have to say anything. It's just the calm presence allows people to open up their own selves just by being there.
And you brought up very, very important part is it has to be genuine. It has to be authentic. People can feel it from 5 miles away.
It's absolutely true, and not everybody believes that. They teach bedside manner as a series of techniques to imitate compassion, but it's not the same thing. And you made that really, you're ahead of yourself there by understanding That's a very important point.
Yeah. And I think that is what you're saying, that you can teach someone to imitate compassion, but you have to actually feel it. It has to come from within.
Yes, you need to train because our access to our natural compassion has been covered up by our habits of thinking about ourselves first and then not thinking about others as much. So we need to change that around a little bit. But when we do, we get happier. We feel better. When you go to see a patient and you leave and you realize that they're still upset, that doesn't make you feel good.
Yeah.
You go in and see that you've exchanged something and they feel better and they trust you. That feels good. If you do that all day long, your medical practice becomes effortless.
Effortless. Yeah. That's it. If it's authentic, it's effortless.
Yeah. It takes training though. You can't
Yeah.
just like a mental switch, And the training is calming your mind. That's what meditation ultimately. That's what meditation is for.
Yeah.
Is to tame your mind. And not just for momentary relaxation. That's not just for something for yourself, to feel better for a few minutes. But you train, I call it meditation with a purpose. The purpose of learning to let go of your unnecessary thoughts and tame your mind so that you can be focused on other people, even temporarily. That really is beneficial.
Yeah. And that brings us right to the next question, which is about impermanence. So there's one thing many humans don't want to think about, which is death. And on one level, we kind of know that we are going to die, but on a different level, we don't really grasp it, the totality of it. So how can we become more aware of our own impermanence and deeply realize that we are going to die?
Yeah, so you raised to me what is the key, the most valuable thing to contemplate, in addition to compassion, is impermanence. And so the way that we become more comfortable with impermanence is to think about it deeply and realize it's not just us that are impermanent. Everything that is formed in this world will fall apart. Everything is falling apart even as we speak. Everything in our body is changing every second. You don't think of yourself as a little baby in your mother's arms, but you are that same person. But it changed. That baby was impermanent. When did you change from a baby into this adult medical student? Very gradually. Can't even tell. But then you did. You went through all those changes to become a woman, and so we're always changing. Everything's changing. Nothing stays the same. And somehow, in our Western culture, we develop this idea that we grow up. That we grow up, and then we get everything that we need to be happy, and then we'll always have it. We get the right job, the right relationship, the right amount of money, the right place to live, the right amount of places to exercise and recreate, and they go, I did it, I'm happy. And then they change. Our bodies change. I'm older than I used to be now, and so my ability to exercise at the same level is less, but I still get to do it. So impermanence is not just something we apply to our lives, it's everything. Everything is impermanent. Everything changes. So then, if we really take that to heart, which is not hard to do because it's irrefutably true, there's nothing we see in our life. If things were permanent, then nothing would ever change. Things would be frozen exactly at that point. So the fact that impermanence allows for things to change. Bad things are impermanent. Good things are impermanent. We need to just accept them. And then when something really bad happens, like the loss of a loved one or something like that, which some people are never able to get over, then we really being grounded in permanence allows you to be sad because you're going to miss this person, but you don't have to be devastated. You don't have to question how life could be like this, because how can it be otherwise? Nothing can last. We don't know. There's no guarantees. And that can feel really unsettling at first, but then it can feel really strong.
Yeah.
And if, as a doctor, if you can really have that feeling, just even standing at the bedside of someone who's passing away or going through a really hard time, that gives you some strength that they can rely on. They can feel it, even if you don't say it. But if you're as nervous about seeing them die as they are to die, then that's not very helpful.
Yeah.
You know, and so you say, how do we help people die? How do we be with people? We have to become really firmly rooted in impermanence.
Mm-hmm.
It's really the key, as you pointed out, and it's not hard. It's the least difficult concept in Buddhism because every second we can be reminded that things are really permanent. You know?
Yeah.
And that includes our lives. You know?
Yeah. It can be a great relief if we feel that all our suffering is gonna end as well sometime.
Yeah, now that's a little trickier because our suffering doesn't end.
True.
You know, if it would only end if our mind ended.
That's true.
So that's in Buddhist practice, you know, that's a little beyond this conversation. That is compassion, but we need to be aware that, you know, our goal is an enlightened state beyond suffering. That's what we practice. That's meditation ultimately leads to. We can escape this endless cycle of having to be born and go through all this cycling of endless suffering again. Buddha taught his techniques to end suffering completely. And so, that's a more profound subject. But at least when you deal with impermanence, you can think, okay, this really bad thing happened, but where's the guarantee that it can't happen? You know, why did I believe that it couldn't happen? Because impermanence means that it can happen.
Yeah.
I've spoken at memorials where this really helped people understand, you know, accept a little bit better because then there's a difference between, as I said, being devastated for the rest of your life and just being appropriately sad. And on top of that, because the time right after death is very important in Buddhist thinking, you can turn your own grief into trying to still help them in that state. That's in my book, and that's something important to think about, but beyond the scope, I think, of this discussion.
More advanced. So now is a very interesting question because several years ago you had a severe heart attack, and in your book you described the thoughts you had. And since you have a great understanding of impermanence and you have practiced the Buddhist teachings about death, you were able to reach a very peaceful and relaxed and calm state. And that gives me and many other people hope that we might be able to achieve the same when we are in the inevitable moment of death. So, how does one achieve such a calm and relaxed state of mind?
So you asked me about how I was able to be calm during my heart attack, and I was as amazed as anybody. You know, I mean, I've been training for this moment for 30 years. As you'll remember from the book, I first met Tuku Urgyen Rinpoche, one of my main meditation teachers, while he was having a heart attack. And he was so calm and unafraid of death that it was the first person I'd ever seen who was like that. I said, how can he be like that? How can he not be scared to die? How can he not be scared of having a heart attack up in a remote mountain on the side of the valley? And it was true. And I thought, that's so to see. That's before I had even become a practitioner or anything. I was still just a doctor taking care of some Tibetan lamas, but I wasn't a practitioner. And I thought, God, if that's possible, I want to learn how to do that. And so, amazingly, 28 years later, I had the exact same heart attack that he had in a very remote setting, like he was in a remote setting. I was a little bit worse off. I was in the snow and had to get out of a helicopter now and stuff. So then I immediately became very focused. And one of the things that really helped, which really was a surprise to me, because I have a wife and 2 children. They were in college at the time. This is 10 years ago. And I thought about them, and I thought, okay, what I realized is I could die any second from a heart attack while I was out. one thing that really surprised me is I thought about my family, my wife and my two children. And I thought, okay, if I don't die, then I'll get to still be with him, just like before, so I don't need to think about that. And if I do die, I'll never see them again, so I don't need to think about that. And in that moment, I put my family, that toll to my family out of my mind. Not that I didn't care about them, but it wasn't necessary to think about them. So then I said, okay, what I really need to think about is being prepared to die if I do die. I was in a unique situation because I was either going to die or not. It wasn't like I was in a plane going down over the Pacific Ocean, you know. And so, but I thought, okay, if I do die, there's a lot of things about how your mind should be and what you can achieve. There's even, if you die in meditation, you can achieve enlightenment in that moment. There's this brief moment after you die where there's a great opportunity. I've been taught this, and I believed it. So you're asking me, how can you be like that? I think you need to spend your life when you're really young and strong and not going to die any second, likely, and train. You know, you can't train at the last second. It's too late. You know, it's all coming and you're overwhelmed. So I started off by trying to meditate, and then I was reciting something, and then when I tried to visualize my teacher, he actually appeared to me in a kind of miraculous way. And then I didn't die, so I backed away from that and, you know, survived. Here I am talking to you, you know. And I had this thought. I was pretty amazingly peaceful for being, you know, in minus 20 snowstorm in the mountains. I was backcountry skiing when this happened and waiting for a helicopter. And then, you know, I said, as I was drifting towards my teacher and feeling like I was going to die, but it would be okay, I said, but if it's okay, I wouldn't mind sticking around for a while. Almost hesitant because things were going really well from a dying point of view. Then I kind of came back, and now here I am. And my teacher, one of my teachers, talked to him. He came to my house in Jackson after my heart attack and came a few months later. I was really grateful to talk to him. He said, if you hadn't had that thought, you would have done it. It just showed you had some value in your life and you wanted to continue. I feel like it was why I came back. So you had also asked the question about that calm state of mind might have saved me, actually, because I wasn't panicking. I didn't put out the cortisol and increased heart rate, which you wrote so clearly about. And so when people just heard that I had died, that I had this situation, I was meditating, a lot of them just assumed that I was meditating so that I wouldn't die. No, but I was meditating so that I could die in the right way. I wasn't giving any thought to not dying.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's what was different because of my training, you know. But it may have well been a side benefit.
Yeah, that's what I meant, a side effect.
Right, because I had about 50% chance of dying from that heart attack in that period. And I didn't die. So, but it wasn't my motivation. The moment of death is very important, and you need to train. Because otherwise your mind will just panic and go off in all the directions you won't know what to do. And then when you find yourself on the other side, it's a dreamlike state. You have a dreamlike body. Like in a dream, anything can happen. You know, it's not so grounded as it is in this lifetime.
Yeah. So you say it's long-term practice, many years.
Yeah, I think that's why I was lucky to have the 28 years between when I first saw him having his heart attack without fear. It probably took every year of that. But, you know, it's developing confidence. The only way you can develop confidence is to train, ask questions, decide. First, the very first question is what we talked about at the very beginning of this podcast is, does your mind continue or not after you die? So you got to resolve that. If you're not even sure about that, then how are you going to try to be in a certain state of mind. If it does continue, does it matter what you do? A lot of people say, well, I'll just wing it. Well, it doesn't work very well in Buddhism. There's a lot of things that happen right after we die that can steer us in different directions. So there's a lot of, there's texts about it and so on. So you study and you begin to believe that it's true. You begin to believe. I was very fortunate because of my intimate relationship with the teachers, asking questions over and over again until I could resolve my doubts. So, in Austria, you have this great opportunity. Great teachers come regularly in a really conducive setting. You get teachings, you practice. But you have to have a karmic connection. You could drag your other friends there and then you're just going off the back because of karma.
Really true.
So if you have the connection, don't waste it. That's one of the things that Buddhists teach. Don't waste that connection, because you never know. Will you be fortunate enough to have it again in the future? So if you feel some connection with these kinds of teachings, take them to heart. Practice. It'll lead to happiness, the end of suffering. You'll be able to help other people. A totally positive way to live your life.
That is such a good answer. Thank you very much. And as a last question, I'm very curious about this one, is what do you think is the most important thing that all humans should know and or do?
Cultivate compassion for the suffering of sentient beings, and start by asking yourself that whatever happens to one person is the same for all people. Everybody's equal. Everybody suffers. Everybody has this. So you can feel this more universal connection, make up your mind to do good, refrain from doing harm. And then you want to know what really happens. You want to know, is there something I need to prepare for? Is there some way I can live a more positive, purposeful life? And for me, Buddhist teachings had a complete way of dealing with everything in that regard, and that's why I took it to heart. And that's why at the moment where I thought I might die, I was able to recall those things and realize this is my one chance. No other chance may come. This is it. And so we need to cultivate that kind of confidence. But start off by thinking about suffering. The cause of suffering is our own mental fabrications that just make us constantly filled with hope and fear and uncertainty and happiness. And so training is called taming our mind so that we can have a more calm mind and then not generate karma and suffering so much. And then recognize that not only do we get a little bit better, but the Buddha taught about a state, we call it enlightenment, that is completely beyond suffering. We can evolve into a situation where suffering no longer applies to us. And then we are in a position to genuinely help others achieve that state. We can't help everyone overcome their own suffering if we have not learned how to do it. Just like you can't teach medicine unless you know how to do medicine. And then, not only that, but there's a path. There's a method that can be applied. And so, if you want to have a meaningful life, this is one way. It's not the only way. Other religions teach similar things of being calm and kind and so on. But the Buddhism, if you don't have a big attachment to another religion, Buddhism is a very rational, laid out path that you can really embrace if you feel drawn to it at all. You can trust it.
Yeah, something to hold on to. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. And just my cat here says hello. Hi.
What would the internet be without a cat on it?
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful cat.
Dawa. Her name is Dawa. She.
So I'm sure she benefited from hearing these teachings.
Yeah.
So, no, they say it's really true. It's one of the reasons that people recite their mantras out loud in case there's any insects or animals.
Wow.
Hear it. And it sows a little tiny seed in their mind that in the future they might be drawn to Buddhism. It's kind of funny thing.
That is genius. Yeah.
All right, Ray. Well, I hope I can meet you. It looks like I may be back in Austria next June.
Really?
Medicine and compassion.
Perfect.
So, stay alert. We're trying to pick some dates.
Yeah. On my second.
Or just teaching you in person?
Yeah.
A different one?
Yeah.
Or did you just change clothes?
Woo! Oh no! Woo! He's a little bit wild.
Good luck with your study.
Yes.
Your training.
Thank you so much.
Being a medical student, but I appreciate
yes.
that. Okay.
Thank you really much and have a great day.